My brother told my father I had forged Grandma's signature to cut myself into her will. My father froze my access to the family estate account and told me I had 48 hours to confess or he was calling the police. What neither of them knew was that I had spent the previous 3 days quietly pulling together every document, every timestamp, and every metadata log that proved the forgery was theirs, not mine. And I was a paralegal. I read fine print for a living. I want to tell you where I was when the call came in, because the setting matters. I was at my kitchen table in my apartment in Columbus, eating leftover pad thai straight from the container, wearing the oversized sweatshirt I had stolen from my college roommate 6 years ago and never returned. It was a Sunday. I had just come back from visiting my grandmother's grave for the first time since the funeral 2 weeks earlier, and I was exhausted in the specific way you get exhausted when grief sits in your chest like wet concrete. My phone lit up with my father's name. I answered on the second ring. He didn't say hello. "I need you to explain something to me," he said. His voice was the kind of careful that means someone has already decided something and is giving you the performance of an open mind. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Your brother found something in the estate paperwork." He paused, and I could hear him breathing. "There's a document showing that you formally renounced your claim to the property on Hartwell Road 3 years ago. It has your signature, notarized." I set down my fork. The property on Hartwell Road was my grandmother's house. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, a backyard with an apple tree she had planted the year my father was born. She had told me since I was 12 years old that it would be mine someday. Not because she loved me more, she was always clear about that, but because my brother had gotten the investment accounts, the beach rental income, the car, and the watch collection. She had written it all down. I had seen the will. The house was mine. "That document doesn't exist," I said. "It has your name on it, sweetheart, and your signature." "Then someone made it. Because I have never signed anything like that. I didn't even know that was legally possible until just now." "Your brother hired an estate attorney. The attorney says it's valid. She says you likely signed it without fully understanding what it was, maybe something bundled into other paperwork during the estate planning meeting 3 years ago." The estate planning meeting 3 years ago. I remembered it. My grandmother had called us all in to update her documents after her second hip surgery. There had been a stack of papers. I had signed several things: a healthcare proxy update, a financial power of attorney addendum, a form about the beach rental LLC. I had not read every page the way I should have. I was 28. I trusted everyone in that room. "Dad, I need to see that document." "Your brother's attorney has it. She says if you want to contest it, you'll need your own representation. And frankly, Olivia," he stopped himself. "Frankly, it would cost more than the house is worth in legal fees, and it would tear this family apart." My name felt like a warning in his mouth. "She's been gone 3 weeks, I said. "You're telling me my brother found this document, hired an attorney, and already has a legal opinion, all in 3 weeks. He wanted to get ahead of probate. You know how he is." I knew exactly how he was. "I need to go," I said. "Think carefully before you do anything rash. Your brother is not trying to hurt you. He's trying to protect the estate." I ended the call and sat very still for a long time. My brother and I had not been close since his wedding 4 years ago, when he married a woman I will describe as someone who keeps a running tally of every perceived slight and refers to family gatherings as networking opportunities. She had inserted herself into every conversation with my grandmother, every holiday, every hospital visit. I had watched her work the room at the funeral like she was at a cocktail party. My grandmother had been polite to her in the way that very old, very wise women are polite to people they have fully figured out. I picked up my phone again and called my best friend, who is also a licensed attorney, though not in estate law. She listened to everything I told her without interrupting. "You need the original document," she said when I finished. "They have it." "You need a copy then? Request it formally in writing. If this thing is real, they have to disclose it during probate. And if it's been submitted to the probate court already, it's public record. You can pull it yourself." And if it's not real? She was quiet for a moment. Then someone created a legal document, forged your signature, had it notarized by someone who either didn't verify identity properly or was in on it, and filed it with a court. That's not a family disagreement, that's fraud. I thanked her and hung up. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a yellow legal pad beside it, and I started writing down everything I remembered about that meeting 3 years ago. Every person in the room, every document I had been handed. The name of the notary, whether there was anyone else present, what I had been told each page was for before I signed it. Then I opened the Ohio Probate Court's public records portal. The document had been filed 6 days after my grandmother's death. 6 days. She had been in the ground for less than a week. I pulled the PDF. It was 4 pages. The first 3 were boilerplate legal language about voluntary renunciation of inheritance rights. The 4th page had 2 things, my signature and a notary stamp from a firm called Whitmore & Associates. I stared at my signature. It looked like mine. The loops, the way I cross my T, the long tail on the G in my last name, it looked right. But something was wrong with it, and I couldn't immediately identify what. I zoomed in. The ink. In every document I had actually signed, my signature is in blue ink. I have used a blue Pilot G2 pen since college, and I am borderline religious about it. I once drove back to a restaurant because I left one on the table. On this document, my signature was in black. I sat back. That was not proof. That was a detail. But it was a detail that didn't fit. And details that don't fit are what I do for a living. I forwarded the PDF to my personal email, then opened the document properties. Every digital file carries metadata, information about when it was created, when it was last modified, what software made it, and what device. This is not hidden. It is just not something most people think to look at. The document showed a creation date of 11 months ago. Not 3 years ago. 11 months ago. I put my hand over my mouth. The estate planning meeting, the one where they claimed I had signed this form alongside the other documents, was 3 years ago. If this form had truly been signed and notarized at that meeting, it would have been prepared before that meeting. It would have been created at least 3 years ago, more likely 3.5. Someone had created this document 11 months ago, which was, I noted, approximately 2 months after my grandmother was diagnosed with the cardiac condition that ultimately killed her. I saved everything. I saved it to my hard drive, to the cloud, to a USB drive, and I emailed copies to my friend's secure legal email. Then I made one more call to the notary firm. Whitmore & Associates was a small office in a suburb north of Columbus. I lit them up. They had a website, a phone number, and a Yelp page with 4 reviews, 2 of which were from accounts with no profile photos and generic usernames. I noted the name of the notary listed on the stamp, a woman named Iris Boland. It was a Sunday evening. I left a message. Iris Boland called me back the next morning at 7:45, before I had finished my coffee. When I explained what I was calling about, she was quiet for a long moment. "Can you describe the document?" she asked. I read her the header information. Another silence. "I don't have a record of that in my log," she said slowly. "And I would. I keep detailed records. It's required." "Is it possible someone used your stamp without your knowledge?" The pause that followed told me she had already considered this possibility and found it deeply uncomfortable. I would need to look into this. I would need to make some calls. "I understand, but I want you to know that I intend to raise this in probate court, and I would rather you be prepared." She thanked me and we hung up. I sat at my kitchen table with both hands around my coffee mug and thought about my brother. I thought about the gap between who I wanted him to be and who he had shown me he was over many years in many small ways, and now in one very large one. I thought about how our parents had always given him the benefit of the doubt, always attributed his sharpest edges to stress or ambition or the pressure of being the older one. I thought about how my grandmother had once said to me, quietly, at Christmas, that she worried he had married someone who made him smaller than he was. And I thought about the house, the wraparound porch, the apple tree, the way the kitchen smelled like wood smoke in October. My father called that afternoon. "Your brother wants to have dinner, to talk this through like adults." "I'll be there," I said. "I have some things I want to talk through too." "Good. Friday night, 7 o'clock. Your mother is making pot roast." Of course she was. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I organized everything into a folder, the PDF of the renunciation document, the metadata screenshot showing the creation date, the note from Iris Boland's office, which arrived via email on Wednesday, formally stating that she had no record of notarizing any document matching that description and that her stamp had, to her knowledge, been used without authorization. I printed that email twice. I also put my brother's professional history. He worked in commercial real estate, which meant he dealt with contracts, escrow accounts, and title transfers regularly. I looked up the property records for the house on Hartwell Road, 6 days after my grandmother's death, the same day the renunciation document was filed in probate court. He had initiated a title transfer inquiry with the county recorder's office. He had moved fast. He had moved as if he had already been waiting. I checked one more thing. My grandmother's estate attorney, a woman named Ms. Cho, who had handled her affairs for a decade, had sent me a letter 2 weeks after the funeral. I had not opened it yet. I had set it on the kitchen counter and not been able to bring myself to deal with paperwork while I was still in shock. I found it now, opened it, and read it standing at the counter. It was a cover letter. Attached was a copy of my grandmother's final will, executed 18 months ago. The house on Hartwell Road was listed under my name. There was a handwritten note at the bottom of the cover letter in Miss Cho's handwriting. Your grandmother was very specific about this. She told me she wanted to make certain it was clearly documented and unambiguous. Please reach out if you have any questions. I read that note 3 times. Then I put everything in a leather portfolio, got dressed, and drove to my parents' house on Friday night. My father opened the door before I knocked. He had been watching for me, I realized. His expression was carefully neutral, the look of a man trying very hard to be fair. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I told you I would." The table in the dining room was set for 5. My mother was in the kitchen. My brother was already seated, his wife beside him, both of them with the composed, slightly pitying expressions of people who believe they have already won. "Sit down," my mother said, coming in with a dish. "Let's eat first." We did not eat first. My brother leaned forward before I had even put my napkin in my lap. "I know this is hard," he said, "but Grandma clearly changed her mind at some point. The document is legal. The attorney has reviewed it. The cleanest thing for everyone is to let probate proceed and move on." "When did she change her mind?" I asked. "The meeting, 3 years ago. She had us all sign updated documents." "I remember that meeting. What notary did she use?" He blinked. "What?" "For that meeting, 3 years ago, Grandma's estate attorney handled the documents. Miss Jo. Does the renunciation form have Miss Jo's notary stamp on it?" A very small hesitation. "It was handled separately. Grandma wanted to deal with some things outside of the main estate documentation." "Outside of Miss Cho? After a decade of working with her?" "Grandma was allowed to use whoever she wanted." "She was," I agreed, "and the notary she apparently used is named Iris Boland, except Miss Boland has no record of notarizing this document, has formally stated that her stamp was used without authorization, and is currently in the process of filing a complaint with the Ohio Secretary of State's office." I opened my portfolio. "I have her email right here." The silence was different from what I had expected. I had expected anger or denial. What I got was a particular quality of stillness, the way a room sounds when everyone in it has stopped breathing. My mother set down her serving spoon. My father looked at my brother. My brother looked at his wife. His wife looked at her hands. "I also have the document's metadata," I said, sliding a page across the table. "This is a screenshot of the file properties. The document was created 11 months ago. Not 3 years ago, 11 months ago, which is 2 months after Grandma's diagnosis. My father picked up the page. He was a man who had worked in insurance for 30 years and understood what document dates meant. "And I have this," I said, setting Miss Chill's letter and the attached will on the table. Grandma's final will, executed 18 months ago by her estate attorney of 10 years, with a personal note confirming she was specific and deliberate about leaving me the house. This is the version that gets filed in probate. The renunciation document is fraudulent, and based on the notary's formal statement, someone accessed and used her stamp without authorization, which is a felony in Ohio. My brother stood up, his chair scraped back hard. "This is insane, you're accusing me of—" "I'm not accusing you of anything out loud," I said. "I'm presenting documents to our parents. They can draw their own conclusions." "You forged the metadata." File metadata cannot be altered retroactively without forensic evidence of tampering, which there is none of. A court's digital forensics examiner will confirm that. Would you like to get to that point? His wife put her hand on his arm. He shook it off. "We needed that house," he said, and I think he surprised himself by saying it. His voice dropped. "We needed the equity. We're underwater on the investment property. We've been trying to restructure for 2 years. We thought—" He stopped. "You thought I wouldn't look closely," I said. Not unkindly, because at that point, the anger had gone somewhere quieter. "You thought I'd see a legal document with my name on it and assume it was real and fold. The way I folded on the graduation money, and the car loan, and the time you told Mom I missed her birthday on purpose when I was in the hospital." My mother made a sound I had never heard from her before. "You were in the hospital," she said. "For 2 days. Kidney stones. I texted you. He told you I was fine and had just decided not to come." She turned and looked at my brother, really looked at him the way mothers sometimes look at their children when something that has been slightly out of focus for years suddenly sharpens into clarity. He sat back down. He did not look at her. My father set Miss Cho's letter flat on the table with both palms pressing it down as if he needed to anchor himself to something real. "How long?" he asked my brother. Not loudly, quietly. "It's not that simple, Dad." "How long have you been doing things like this?" His wife answered before he could. She said his name. He told her to stop. She told him she hadn't signed up for fraud charges. He told her she hadn't objected at the time. And it dissolved from there in the particular way that a partnership built on advantage dissolves when the advantage disappears. I watched my parents watch their son. My mother's face went through several things I couldn't name and didn't try to. My father was very still. He was the kind of man who processed things slowly and thoroughly, the way old machinery processes, and I could see him doing it, rearranging years of interpretation around a new set of facts. I stood up. "I'm not going to file criminal charges," I said. "Not right now. What I'm going to do is submit the legitimate will to probate court Monday morning, along with the notary's statement. The fraudulent document will be challenged and, given the metadata evidence, it will not survive that challenge." I picked up my portfolio. "The house is mine. Grandma made sure of that." "Olivia," my mother said, "don't go." "I have a dinner reservation," I said, and even I wasn't sure if I was echoing something or just telling the truth, with people who know me. I walked out the front door and down the driveway and sat in my car for a minute with my hands in my lap. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of early evening quiet where you can hear someone's sprinkler 2 streets over. I had grown up in this neighborhood. I had ridden my bike on this street. I had spent more hours in that house behind me than I could count. I started the car and drove away. The probate court accepted the original will without significant challenge. The fraudulent document was flagged during review. The metadata discrepancy and the notary's sworn statement were more than sufficient for the examiner to set it aside. No additional court action was required on my part. My brother and his wife separated 5 months later. The investment property went into foreclosure shortly after. I found this out not from my parents but from a cousin who mentioned it at Thanksgiving with the careful tone of someone delivering news they assume you already know. The house on Hartwell Road is mine. I haven't moved in. I'm not sure I will. For now, I drive out there on Sundays sometimes and sit on the porch with coffee and look at the apple tree my grandmother planted 60 years ago. The porch boards need repainting. The gutters need cleaning. It needs work, the way things that have been loved for a long time and survived something difficult need work. My father calls every Sunday. He doesn't have a lot to say usually. Mostly he asks how I'm doing and I tell him. Sometimes he says he's sorry. Not as an event, but as a fact. Casually, the way you acknowledge something true. I haven't told him it's okay, because I don't think it is, exactly. But I have stopped carrying the weight of it for him. My mother started going to a therapist. She told me this herself without being asked on a phone call in March. She said she had been thinking about the way she had interpreted things over the years and wanted to understand that better. It was not an apology. It was something more complicated and maybe more honest than an apology, and I found I could hold it without needing it to be more. My brother sent one text 6 weeks after the probate decision. He said he was going through a hard time and could use some support. I read it twice and thought about the hospital room where I had lain for 2 days while he told our mother I was fine and had simply chosen not to show up. I thought about the document with my signature in black ink. I thought about my grandmother's handwriting at the bottom of Miss Jo's letter, the way she had made sure, specifically and deliberately, to leave a clear record. I typed back, "I hope things get easier for you." Then I put my phone down and went back to what I was doing. The ledger, as they say, has a way of settling itself if you give it enough time and refuse to let anyone erase what's already been written. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with being the one who does things right in a family that rewards the one who does things easily. I know that loneliness well. I lived inside it for most of my adult life, and for a long time I mistook it for just the cost of being responsible. What happened with my brother and my grandmother's house taught me something I didn't expect to learn from a court document and a metadata timestamp. That integrity is not just a moral position, it's a practical one. Every time I had been careful, kept records, read contracts, held on to paperwork that most people would have thrown away. I had been building something without knowing it. Not a case, not a strategy, just a clear record of who I actually was. And when the moment came that someone tried to replace that record with a false one, the truth was already there, already documented, already waiting. I think about Iris Boland sometimes. She was a notary I had never met. Someone with no connection to my family drama, who called me back on a Monday morning and told me the truth without anyone asking her to perform a kindness. She just had standards. She kept detailed logs because her profession required it. And when something didn't match, she said so. There is a kind of quiet, intellectual honesty in that, the kind that doesn't announce itself, that just keeps showing up in the form of accurate records and careful work. That consistency protected both of us. And then there is the harder thing, the thing I sat with for a long time after probate closed. My brother did not become that person overnight. The document was new, but the pattern was old. The birthday I supposedly missed. The years of being the one who could take it, the one who didn't need as much, the one who would absorb whatever was redirected her way. I had accepted so much of that without pushing back, not because I lacked the ability, but because I kept choosing peace over accuracy. I kept letting small false narratives stand because correcting them felt like making trouble. What I understand now is that allowing a small untruth to go unchallenged is not kindness. It is a kind of slow permission. Each time I said nothing, I made it slightly easier for something larger to be attempted. The courage I finally found in that dining room to sit down, open a folder and say, "Here is what actually happened," that was not something that arrived suddenly. It had been accumulating for years, waiting for a moment large enough to require it. My grandmother left me the house because she knew me. She knew I would not let it disappear quietly. She put it in writing 18 months before she died and asked Miss Cho to make a note. She was specific and deliberate. She had done her part. The rest was mine to carry. I don't sit on that porch thinking about winning. I sit there thinking about her and about what it means to tend something carefully for a long time, knowing that care is its own kind of argument for what a thing is worth.